So, hello folks. This will be my first attempt at a live stream, coding stream. So if things get messy or completely out of hand, everything's fine, I guess. So let's get started. This is related to a project that deals with both software and hardware. And today we're gonna code a bit of a web-based UI to control a set of MQTT-based sensors and actuator nodes. And more on that right here. So as you can see, there's a central Raspberry Pi that's a broker that has an MQTT broker, also a HTTP server, and etc. And there are multiple hardware nodes connected to it, and each hardware node can have any number of sensors and actuators connected to it. So as you can see, I have here, I have a little camera set up so you can see one of the prototype nodes. And so these are all communicating with the central broker and each other and the web-based UI via MQTT. So I've been wanting to do a live coding stream for a while. I have absolutely no idea if I will like it, if it will go well, or whatever. I haven't publicized it either, so who knows? So let's get going. We can close this, I guess. Oh, bear with me. I'm not very used to OBS and stuff, so let's move that to the side. So here you can see I already started coding a bit of the UI, and I did some prototyping first in Node-RED, and for now the interface is very basic, and we're just receiving information from the node, its name, its IP address, whether it's online or not, and its type. Already started adding some lists of sensors and, well, their information. You can also send a ping command, and any connected node will reply back. So if you want to get an up-to-date status, that's one way of dealing with that. And so yeah, today I'm just gonna start adding some various pieces of UI. In future videos, I might also get into the C++, so Arduino side of things, because these are, well, all the nodes are running some C++ code that still needs a lot of work as well. But first, let's get going on the UI. So, for example, so if you take a look here, we have a list of sensors and a list of actuators, which is not yet displayed, so we can just add that. So I'll try commenting things as I go. I have absolutely no idea how this should be, but yeah, you got to start somewhere. So this is using preact with a very nifty library called HTM, and that allows you to create some simple interfaces declaratively very fast, so that's very pleasant. So I tend to take a quick look very fast. Oh, by the way, very important, I'm not using any server-side thing, so this is purely client-side, and all I need to do is basically refresh things. Um, so what we want, for example, is to control servos, so turnouts, because this is for model train type hardware. So I can show you a bit of things. So let's switch to here, so you can see them both side by side. So that would be not yet control over here, but hopefully you can see and hear things. So don't worry, I have some bugs that tend to trigger a bit too much sensor information. So that's literally sensory overload, but at least we're going to be able to see that reflected in the UI. So let's take a look. As you can see here, it keeps sending messages. So I think I might need to reset the hardware. Let me check. Of course, this is what happens when you do live things. It's not behaving quite as you wish. So it will normally switch to status offline and very quickly again to online. Okay, so unfortunately, it seems it's still spamming. So what I can do here is actually reset the configuration, and it should be resetting or not. It's of course not quite there. So since I don't want to take care of the Arduino side of things for today, I'm just gonna ignore that. So we have turnouts, and we would like them to be controlled for this non-node red UI. So what I can add here is for each actuator, we will do something based on the type of the actuator. So we can add a simple div and add a button there. So we can switch to switches literally later. So this one should be move left, and another one can be move right, of course. And we want these to send commands. So I'm just gonna keep it simple for now. I'm not gonna make it different based on the type. So we can get the first thing going. So let's just copy this. We already have this button sending ping commands. So what we want here is send move turnout left, and then we're gonna code those things. So here we have something. So let's add this one. So it's simply going to publish an MQTT message. So we're connected to Mosquito, the web, so the MQTT broker via WebSockets. Yeah, I'm not gonna be doing magical debug things, so console log is quite sufficient in this case. Sending um, move turnout left. And I actually already have these things working here, so I can just copy the command that I need. So let's use this one. So command is a turnout, value 0, it's one direction, 1 is the other direction. And the topic we want to send it to is actually the name of the node, so it's only targeting a specific hardware node. And we can directly do move turnout right, so that we have both directions there, and this should be very easy, just replace the value there. And now let's take a look at what we have. I'm so used to coding in Chrome-based browsers, I always forget there's no refresh here. So the list is not being displayed. So let's just see. I need to make sure that it's actually what's refreshing the thing. So let's add some dummy item here. This var. So auto tests. So yeah, I have no idea how this will look. So that should be okay. So it means it's just not fetching the list of actuators. So topic turnout triggered. Yes, of course, it's not being populated because I don't have it set up at this point. Because since sensors publish eyes data, they are very easy to add. But in this case, we need to create a list of actuators. So we will hard code it at first. It's always, I think, the easiest way to deal with that. So let's just take a look. So we know there's this one. So I'm gonna hard code a set of actuators, and it's gonna be type turnout. Oops, ID, as far as I remember, it's 0, pin 0. It needs all this data because the actual nodes and the list of attached sensors are configurable live. So in the end, I also want to add a UI to deal with that. So let's take a look. Actuator.time is undefined, of course, because I had a timestamp for the sensors and that code was just copy and pasted. So by the way, these videos are also supposed to represent the sort of how my brain works and how I actually go from one thing to the other to create code and hardware and things like that. So let's take a look. And there we go. So I hope the camera is picking this up because it's not the best quality. So normally you should see tiny little black servo thing moving. And I can see it's moving twice in the same direction because I likely, yes, made that error of calling the same function twice. And whatever error you might make, it's okay. There you go. So if it wasn't spamming the turnout things, you would see here the correct timestamp when it's being triggered. So we can try to fix the reset configuration. I import from the UI and also add a new entry for that because that's going to be very practical. So it's also on the configuration topic. That's the one used to configure any nodes. So we're gonna copy this and we're gonna add a new button in there to be able to clear. Oh, I already added it. Haha. And we just have to add the correct thing. So what we want is to trigger a function called clear configuration. And we're gonna add that one as well. Clear configuration. So by the way, if you're wondering, I usually use ES6 or ES 2020 or whatever it's called these days. So modern JavaScript, but I absolutely try to avoid any transpilation, so it means also no TypeScript and whatever. I tend to favor minimal tooling so that you can actually focus on your code and not overly complex and hard to maintain systems. So sending clear configuration, and this is going to send our message, which is this one, which we just copy and pasted. And the topic, of course, needs to change. And I'm going to double check in my C++ code, which is very messy right now, what we're using for configuration. So here you see there's set CFG. And yes, I added a target node setting, so that's why the other one wasn't working. So this is gonna likely change in the future to use mqtt topics better, hopefully. So let's get back to here. And so this is still going to be config. That hasn't changed. So target node is going to be this one. For now, this will be hard-coded. Of course, in the end, you want to make it based on the actually current selected node or something like that. So let's see how that works. And okay, it's sent it. Normally, the node should stop and reset. So it's obviously not doing that. So let's do some debugging. So we have sent command reset configuration target node. So that would be, of course, node and not target node. This is why having coherence matters. That's something I still need to work on beyond this prototyping phase. So this is very early prototypes. And still nothing. So what else could it be? We can, of course, get a bit of helping hand by actually checking what's happening um, on the Arduino, and we can just monitor. So that's being spammed. See on this end. So if you're not familiar with Arduino, it's a software environment and hardware, open source, open hardware, which set this whole hardware, cheap open source hardware revolution sort of in motion. So let's check what's going on here. So sorry about that. So it did receive command reset configuration node and this one. Uh, um, so current node set CFG. Oh, and of course reset configuration target node here. So we can still upload that and get a check if it's correct. So here we'll be displaying what node we actually want to reset and the current name of the nodes. And while we're at it, we can also check if we actually have a match to see why it's not triggering that. So no name equals target node. And so let's upload that. Well, I already have some things presets that I is going to upload all that via cable. I also have over-the-air updates, but in this case, during debugging particularly, I prefer to just use, well, the wired mode. Even though, surprisingly, OTA is almost faster than cable. So let's see what's going on now. So it's still spamming. I might actually have a short somewhere because it shouldn't be triggering it that much. So let's try this again and see what's going on. So, so as you can see here, current name. Okay, well that explains something. I am actually sending the wrong message. That's called being sort of an idiot in this case, but it's all fine. So let's just also add something to our live stream because I noticed it's not displaying necessarily the browser UI at the same time. So let's have that so we can have a look at everything at the same time. Of course, in limited fashion, I'm not really that good with adding all these things in OBS, but yeah, bear with me, first screen. So let's do this again. And normally, this time, it should still not work because we haven't refreshed it, of course. So let's do that. And there you go. You can see it stopped spamming because it actually cleared the list of active nodes. So it just disconnected and reconnected. So now what is going to happen is if I switch screens here, you should see that, is that when I use the buttons, they're not working anymore because we actually cleared the list of sensors and actuators that are stored on the hardware. So by the way, if you're curious, the hardware node where, so this is the one. So it's a small Wi-Fi chip, ESP8266, and some I2C based connected devices. So what we can do now is simply, or not so simply, add a way of being able to add additional devices to a node remotely. So there's some code already existing for that. And if I recall correctly, I think it's this one. Yes. So what we want to send is something like this. First, we're going to hardcode this and add a button to send that, and then add some UI that allows you to actually select what nodes you want, which could take a bit longer. So first of all, we can add, of course, we're going to split this into modules, by the way, if you're wondering. So set configuration, and that would be this. So client.publish and configuration, and this time it's going to be, so I'm going to make it a bit different this time. So let's have this one. So we already have the JSON, and then we can add just the stringified version because that's string is as expected. Stringify command, and this should actually set the right thing. So again, the train name, the node name, sorry, is actually hard coded in there, but it should still work. Of course, if we don't have a UI for that, it's not going to work so well. So let's add another button and reuse this and called set configuration. Change the UI a bit, set configuration. So let's take a look. So there, we have this. So it should set that, hopefully restart the nodes. And yeah, if we're still seeing this repeated sensor turnout triggered things, it's really very likely to be a short somewhere in the hardware because well, once you reset the software, there's no reason why it would work that way. So at least, as you can see, now it's pinging in and it's doing what it should, and normally, yes, so this is working again. So at least that's some good news. So now I propose that we start to add some better UI to actually deal with adding and removing sensors and actuators. So let's call it that way. So I'm doing some div abuse here. I apologize for that. Normally would be better to use correct HTML elements, but this is just supposed to be a very quick mockup, so I'm not wasting any time on that. So let's have something here like that. And what do we have? We need a button to add new sensor. Let's do that because that's going to make it easier. Just having some separate things for sensors and actuators, add new actuator. And I'm not sure what the best thing here would be, if it's just to use a form or something else. So let's add inputs because that's what we need. So we're gonna use type text for now to add, sorry, that would be for the type. So sensor type. Then we are going to add type number to add sensor ID. And we're going to add another one, which is for the sensor pin. We can already have this. And just so we stop getting spammed by the actuators, I'm just going to remove the list of actuators here, and we can refresh this whole thing and send a set configuration command, which is writing some permanent storage on the node and restarting it. So there's no weird hiccup. As you can see, it's not spamming us with messages anymore, so I guess that's a win. So let's get a move on with the UI. So that will be the one for the sensors. We have also a way of trying out some simple sensor. So here you can see type T, it means turnout. Technically it's a switch, but it's easier to remember in this context. And type I is infrared. So I'm going to show you there's a small infrared sensor that's supposed to detect objects passing over it. So let's get a move on with that. Just a second. I'm really not that good with OBS just yet. So here is the sensor. As you can see, when you put your hands over it, the two things light up. So that's also based on the shade of your hand. So if you want to be sure that it always works, regardless of your skin color, use a piece of paper or anything. In this case, it will be detecting objects. And so that's not something we need to worry about. I usually add a little uh, cut piece of paper underneath anything I need to detect, in this case trains. So, no panic yet. Or is there? So let's try. Ah, there's something wrong. We're not getting any status anymore from that. So let's just try and send a clear configuration thing and see if it's coming back online. It should, if I haven't messed it up, but we'll double check that. In the meantime, let's switch back to the coding part. So let's go back here. I noticed that this is taking a bit too much space. Let's move that. I honestly don't know how people manage this amount of things on a screen, but hey, learn by doing. So let's get back to business. So what are we doing now? Yes, so we're adding this. Let's refresh it. Oh well, what do you know? It came back online. So we are going to do something like this. That would be 0 and 0 by default, although I think there's an offset of 1 for the other thing. And we just want that to add it to the list of sensors. So let's add some button click thing. So I must confess I'm not very used to this version of preact and HTM, so I will have to very likely look up how you get values, except of course the standard JavaScript way of extracting, well, get element by ID and things like that. So this one is gonna be add sensor function. So let's do that. So let's add this thing here. And you know what? Let's do it the old-fashioned way. So what I say is it's always better to do something quickly. I'm gonna look up the information later. Also, it's important never to hesitate to look things up because you can't keep everything in your head. You can't remember everything, so it's always good to know when to look for things. So sensor ID and sensor type, these are all the three things we need. So let's add these variables. So, well, that's going to be an easy one. And there you go. We can cast or convert variables when we need them. And of course, good old Adding sensor. So no, not the good old adding sensor, of course, but the good old sensor log. So sensor ID and sensor pin. So I need to double check. Yes, it's actually using an ID based of 1 that was originally meant to be more readable for human interfaces. I will very likely go with a 0 based indexing because you usually favor that. So let's see what's going on here. Still, I'm not sure this is working. I need to double check the status of things. So let's do that. And bravo. See, this is still not a very good showcase, but well, you make errors, it's fine. And 1 and check. Great. So we have all the things we need. Mm-hmm. We could add, I guess, labels for that. And just add that there. So ID and sensor pin. Let's try that one out. So there, still a bit messy, but what's important is what works. We could also set default values because, well, I find that easier than changing everything. So we already have enough for that. So one very important thing, the sensor nodes, or the actual physical hardware expects to for you to transfer a list of all your sensors and all your actuators at once. So you can't just add them piecemeal. That's making things a bit easier for me. So what we want here is to add the new sensor to the list of in-memory list of sensors. So we're just gonna do that. And so this is usually stored under nodes, and each node is structured like this, data-wise. If I'm going too fast and things like that, I'll check the video once I'm done, and we can always improve that in the next session. So where were we? So add sensor. So what we want here is so nodes. So it's in data.nodes.push, of course. I'm not going to go into immutable data structures, which I usually prefer. Let's keep this as simple as can be. Simple is always good, and you can always improve on it later on. So we already have something that adds no data, and specifically here. So we're gonna add this. We need to find actually the node that we want to attach it to. So you know what? I'm just gonna copy this whole thing and add it here. So the matching node, so this is not going to be new data not name. So we are going to hard code so the node name here that's used to identify it. So it's this one here. So it's going to be node name instead of that. So if we already have that data, that node in our list of nodes, it's just doing find thing, and here it's trying to find a matching sensor. We're gonna ignore that for now. So we're just gonna go with this one. because I'm going to assume that you either have those. Well, we're just doing this to add new sensors, not to edit them. We can work on that later. So what we need is quite simply, so type, sensor type, and you know what, let's make that even easier, sorry, and use some modern JavaScript features, which I really prefer. Type ID and pin, and then we can just do this, type ID and pin. Time is not really relevant right now. We can just keep it this way. So it's going to add that thing. So if there's no matching node, of course, then we need to add a new node. And that's going to be just reusing this one. So comes new node is going to be literally these values. And of course, this one is needing to be here, so we can do a push. Again, not the most elegant code, but at this point, honestly, it doesn't really matter. So it's either pushing to the matching nodes, existing nodes sensors, and adding that. So that's going to be the case for us because we're using an existing node name. Otherwise, it's going to create a new node. So that would be data.nodes dot push. We need to not forget to add that node. And there you go. And now let's give this a try. And refresh. And so what do we have? So we're going to add this sensor ID 1 and sensor pin 0 and add new sensor. Of course, it would have been more practical if I would display the list of all nodes, and so as a way to inspect what we're actually adding. Let's add this one. So let's take a look. Normally we just have one, and we have sensors, and I think it should be this one. Yes. So as you can see, this is one that has been added to the rest of the system, and this is the one we just added. Of course, we want to sorry, just a sec. Want that to match, so this should be, of course, our int. We want an actual int, and we want an actual int here as well. So there we would have this, la la la, that should be okay. Na, na, na. So we can set that to this one. The sensor ID should start at 1. We can always change this later. And this one should start at 0. This should make things a bit more pleasant. Hey, hooray! So we can add a few of them. And take a look. Where is it? Sensors. There. Quite a few sensors that we could send our merry way. By the way, one important thing, I think before we attempt to send this to what do you set configuration thing is reset clear configuration should also clear anything in the current node in memory in our browser. So we're gonna do that. And where would that be? So clear configuration, let's take a look. So this is just sending the message to clear it on the actual node, but we want the sort of shadow copy here to also be updated. So what we need is to also just reuse, for example, the matching node code here, which allows us to find that. We're going to use no name here. This way we can parameterize that in a bit. So if we have a matching node, if we don't, well, it's trying to clear some data of a node we're not actually controlling, so we don't want that. So what we're going to do is just reset the sensors to nothing. We're also going to reset the actuators to nothing, and this should just match that there. And so let's just refresh it again. And so we're resetting clearing, and normally now if we add a new sensor, there should be only a single sensor there. So that makes sense, so everything's fine. Okay, so I think I'm gonna keep it relatively short for the first instance of this live stream because, you know, stress and all that. Oh my. Also, getting kind of hungry here, so I need to plan for that next time. So we are clearing that. I do have a feeling like it's not doing everything as expected because normally the ping and the pong thing should be dynamic. So if we send a ping, we should be receiving something. And we're not. We're not getting any message. So I'm going to double check again here by connecting to the nodes. In case you haven't noticed, or if you have, it's also good. I'm using Platform IO, which is a very practical sort of set of tools and plugins for Studio Code like this that allows you to, well, run commands and manage your dependencies for Arduino projects. But I'll get to that at another time. So let's take a look what's going on here. So is it connected? And here we're having a rather bad issue. It's actually continuously rebooting. So let's just try and clear the configuration again and hope that this time it doesn't. I've been having some instability so on the node, so I need to double check that. It's still going like that. So it's saying configuration file works, actuators from file. So it's not actually correctly clearing that. So let's take a look. So in this case, the best option is to try to re-upload it. And we're going to see, because I'm not doing any checks on the configuration that you're sending to the node, the hardware node. So that might be a big mistake on my part because you could introduce invalid characters and things like that. And C++ code is not a big friend of that. So let's see if it's connecting. Oh, and it's still crashing. So I have an escape hatch for that, which is basically forcing the clearing of memory so that it's actually going to be reset. Just a sec, which would be here. So I'm going to upload that and it's going to clear the memory. And we should start with a clean slate. So I'm going to be jumping a lot between different kind of code in the future for any hardware and software project like this. When it's purely software, which is also planned, or 3D printing, I'll see how and what I do exactly. So it should. Okay, so now it's not rebooting. That's good. So unfortunately, it's not perfect. I still have to re-upload it again, but as you can see, it's just taking a few seconds. So normally, I'm just going to let it do its thing. If I clear things here, we should see a message once it's connected. So I might also want to display that somewhere. So by the way, the broker detected that the node came offline, so that's why I received this. But normally, yeah, there you go. Received a message, wants to know it is back up, and so it's back to online. So what can we do? What we actually want to test it, and I think we're going to end it for today on this note. As you can see, there were so the first one is hard. Well, it's actually connected to the pin 0, and the infrared sensor is connected to pin 1. So what we want to do is actually keep it that way. So I'm gonna add those, and then we're gonna make this dynamic. So let's just, no wait, let's do the other way around. So I'm just gonna remove all of this because we don't need that. And what we want is for sensors to come from, you guessed it, the current node. And we're gonna use that. So of course, the aim for this is to prepare for more dynamic stuff. But again, I absolutely see no problem hard coding things first and building from there. I think it's a really simple way of doing that. And you build things progressively. So if there's a matching node, then we're gonna use matching node.sensors. Otherwise, we're just gonna send an empty array, and we do the same things with actuators. So if there's matching nodes, let's do matching node.actuators or an empty array. And not forgetting comma here. And so I really need to do this correctly. Let's just close that and have this. Okay, so now the sensors and actuators should be sent from there. So we're going to add T01 first. Let's refresh this. So T, the other way around, but T01, add that, and I do 1. And before we send that over and crash our hardware again, let's just see if everything's fine. So it also added, that's one problem with the MQTT broker. It has added the the information about the turnout that was triggered last time, and that's not really practical. So what we're gonna do is actually remove that for now so that it doesn't fill in turnout data from here. And also, this is just temporary. We're just gonna deactivate anything and restart the UI. Of course, we can, at a further point, persist all this into local storage or anything we want. Honestly, it's not relevant. It's supposed to be a simple UI to do some quick configuration. So normally now we should have amazing 2 sensors. So it normally matches what we had. And so let's see if we bring everything crashing down again. I know. So we're setting configuration. We need some feedback on that. I'm not even sure it actually triggered. So yeah, visual feedback is really important. And of course, you see, for once I haven't added that. So it seems to not like some of that. Again, there's some clear hardware issue somewhere. But normally, as you can see in the UI, hopefully up here, just a second, I'm going to switch screens so it's becoming a bit more obvious. So here, when I put my hand over it, you can see that it's actually triggering the block IR, so the infrared sensor. So that actually worked. So I think what we can do is just absolutely clear the things and just add the second sensor and see if that works as it should, and set configuration. So let's see if this works. So it should disconnect and reconnect. Just takes a few seconds. So this is the node status message that we receive from the node telling us, hey, everything went fine or not. So apparently it didn't. Let's just check again if it's rebooting continuously. So I don't have the actual, oh, well, here we go again. So this means I likely did some big mess up in the C++ code. That used to work way better, but I tend to introduce a lot of new features while I'm prototyping, so you can blame my lack of time and concentration when the kids are around. So let's do this again. By the way, this is also something to be said about static versus dynamic things. So the code was extremely stable with hard-coded list of sensors, but the whole idea is that people should be able to configure the nodes and add whatever sensors they need. So any hard-coded solution is not ideal. So I need to look at the memory footprint, and I'm very likely having a Stack Overflow in there somewhere. So normally it's cleared, yes, and now it's connected. So we're gonna add this. You know what? Let's refresh it. So this one ID 2, sensor pin 1, because that's where it's connected, and add this and set configuration. So let's see, it should disconnect and reconnect again. And there we go. And we're not getting spammed, so it's really something to do with those hardware things, I think. And there you go. You can see, now I'm putting my hand over that, and it's actually triggering a message. I'm doing this blind. I need to really improve that. Anyway, so we got what we wanted. We're able to define some basic sensors. We are only dealing with one node here. So next time I'll likely bring two to see what's going on. And we are going to improve the UI to, well, be able to add things more easily and to perhaps have the display together with that thing. And yeah, I think we're going to stop for today. I hope you had fun and it wasn't too messy. And well, hope to see you soon. Bye bye.